I always say the Omoluabi values, right? So we have this concept in Yoruba culture called Omoluabi, Omotioluabi, right? Like you are essentially translates to like the child that God gave birth to, right? But it's just this idea of somebody of character, somebody of value, somebody with patience, somebody with a certain temperament, you know, somebody with humility. And the Omoluabi, my grandfather was one, my father was one. You know, I have a couple in my life. The way they move in the world is different. The way they move, especially when they become successful, is different. They don't change, right? They are that person. And so I just feel like when you are playing the long game, those characteristics they have to be part of who you are.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Eye of Africa. I am your host, Aina Fadina. Today I have the honor of being in Brooklyn, New York at the studio of Busayo Olupona. I have known Busayo for way too many years. And when I think about her journey, I continue to remain inspired. Busayo, congratulations.
Thank you so much. And I'm inspired by you. I'm inspired by you.
Thank you. We've been running this New York streets for many years.
A minute. Yes.
And I think the beauty of what your business has evolved to is knowing, you know, they say 10,000 hours, but I think for Black people, for Black women, I would say 40,000 hours or more.
Yeah, or more.
It's just seeing that journey of hustle, grit, resilience, hard work, sacrifices, and dedication to be in a space where your purpose, your passion has evolved into building a business. So congratulations on that.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's been a very long journey, longer than I expected. Much longer than I expected.
So what did you expect?
To be honest, when I started the brand, it was, I started it like selfishly. I wanted to go back to Nigeria. I had been born here, raised in Nigeria, moved back when I was 12 years old. And around 22, 23, I started going back home to just like hang out with my family, my aunt, and just reconnect with my cousins. And I needed something to do when I was home. And so I started learning how to dye fabric. So this is giving us like dating myself, like 2010, 2011. And I was just apprenticing to do this just for fun, to have something to do. And then I would wear these clothes that I had made for me, right? Because we all have our, tailors and people that make things for you. I would wear them in New York and people really liked them. And I also knew that even though I was like clearly on this path to be a lawyer, it wasn't like, it didn't have that fire. I didn't have the fire around it. And it wasn't that I had the fire around fashion right away, but I knew that it was something I was much more excited about and was much more interesting to me. And so when I said, I'm launching a fashion brand, this is 2012, I certainly didn't think it was gonna take like almost 10 years for anything to happen at the level that it happened. Yeah. I could not possibly have imagined that. And I think if I had thought that it would have taken that long, I probably, knowing myself, I'm not sure I would have done it, right? Yeah. But because you don't know, you're like, okay, I'm gonna have a fashion brand. Yeah. Also, and it looks fun and looks sexy from the outside.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know.
You don't know what you don't know.
What you don't know.
Yeah.
Funding.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to raise capital. But don't understand the difference between debt and equity. And then for some folks, they have the friends, family, and foes round, which most Black people don't for the most part, but we have it in a different way.
Yeah.
So can you just tell me about how you have been able to support your business financially, and if you took on outside investors or a little bit about that?
So I did not quit my job till April 1st, 2022. So I didn't draw an income from this business up until that point. So basically for the entire, this kind of my own sweat equity,
yeah.
right, really funded the business because I didn't didn't draw an income, nor did I have it to draw really, till April 1st of 2022. Which is not, I'm not saying that as like everybody should do that. It just, from my kind of family situation, like we don't have those funds. We don't have that stuff. And so for me, in fashion, as you know, what I didn't say is my first job, so I worked as an associate. I actually quit to run Busayo full-time for 3 years.
I see.
And then completely ran out of money and had to go back and get another job. So I did put my own funding into the business in the beginning, but completely just went through it very, very quickly because obviously I was living in New York and drawing an income from my savings and trying to grow the brand. And then I went back and got another job. So I always advise for people that are building a brand in the beginning, if you can, to really do get a part-time job.
Yeah.
Unless you have the family money and the resources to not do that. So that's one. Number two, I think because I didn't draw an income for a long time, I was just able to build and just take the money from each season and just put it into the next season for production. I mean, I have been sort of thinking about venture a lot as like, somebody described it as putting jet fuel in a little plane, in a little propeller plane. And so it's like, what kind of company do you want to build, right? So if you want to build a huge, you know, I don't know, Warby Parker, an Uber, you absolutely need that jet fuel. But I'm happy with a medium-sized fashion company that is employing, I don't know, 50 people and is around and sustainable. I'm okay with that. So putting jet fuel in my tank is actually
it's
not
gonna break you down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's actually not a good idea.
It changes the ethos of your business.
Completely.
Yeah.
And right now I decide what I want to make.
Yeah.
I'm not, you know, I decide what I want to make.
Yeah.
And so I think entrepreneurs really have to think strongly about that. Like, because it does sound sexy and it is great to be like, we've raised this much fund. And for brands that do that, it's totally fine.
Yeah.
For them to be able to say you've raised this much. But for me, it's not quite what my goals are, right? Like, I just want us to just grow steadily and organically and be stable, you know?
So Busayo, as a creative director and the founder of Busayo, an incredible, beautiful fashion brand, which we're both wearing today.
Yes, don't we look cute?
Tell us a little bit more about the business, the product, the vision that you have.
So the idea, right, initially was that I wanted to take the work and the artistry of our traditional ways, technologies of transforming fabric, right? To, in Yoruba culture, we call it adire. You have, ikat in Indonesia, shibori in Japan, and we have adire in Nigeria. And so the kind of impetus of the brand, always I knew that I wanted the cornerstone of it to be our traditional indigenous techniques of transforming fabrics. Now, was it gonna be Adire, was it going to be Ashoke in the beginning? It wasn't quite sure, but I knew that Adire I loved, and I loved to do it, and I loved the process. I also love the idea that like you start with a blank canvas, and then you bring yourself into it, and you get something completely new, right? So that was like the kind of technique and the technology part of the project. But more than that, I love color. I mean, nobody does colors like we do. And I just felt like clothes here were a little bit boring, to be honest, you know? Like, I felt like we could push it in terms of the color story that we were telling. And I was obsessed, this is again, 2011, 2012, like Diane von Furstenberg I loved. I mean, those years, like there was no one was doing color like her in America, really.
And the wrap dresses.
And the wrap dresses.
She had us in a chokehold.
I know she did, but it was like she's such a brilliant businesswoman. And I just said, you know what, I want to do this. I want to like push the color story. I want us to do more exciting colors. And so that was the kind of creative direction. But in terms of the actual business, it was like, okay, we come from a really challenging place to work. Nigeria is a very challenging country, a challenging environment for people to work. And the opportunity, and again, at the time, very small, to create something here and be able to begin to employ people back home and be able to work and collaborate with artisans at home was at that time was on a very tiny scale, but I could already see it making small incremental changes in the lives of the people that I was working with. And my brain, and my law career was in economic development eventually, but it was actually kind of a way to test some of these ideas of economic development, but do it in like this small scale and this ecosystem that I got to create.
Yeah. So when you think about the incredible talent that you have and translating that to quality assurance for the products that you are producing locally on the ground for global consumers, and then you then think about supply chain, that's a whole nother process as well. Can you just walk us through that journey, sort of brick by brick by brick?
The myth of Nigerian production, right? Like that it was like impossible to produce in Nigeria at scale, right? And so many people told me that. Some of the people that told me that are people who run production facilities in Nigeria, right? Like, which is really discouraging, right? Or people that run fashion schools who literally were like, oh no, you can't do that. Not for this level that you want to be at. Which I just refuse to believe that that's true. The people that are doing it, they don't have two heads, Like, we can do this. I really believed it 1,000%, and I still do. It's one of the reasons I wake up in the morning and do what I do, is that I really believe that we can do this, and we can do this at the highest level. So that being said, we had to basically bring in a lot of tools. So we have a technical designer. We have a dear friend of mine who's a Nigerian man, Dakbo, who is a master tailor who trains our team and trains them on a continual basis. We really think about from every step of the way. We have about 4 people doing quality control now, like an actual quality control team. So that's probably one of our biggest kind of expenditures on ground is that team who are checking every single garment, right? Universe God has been very good about putting people in my path that are in alignment with what we want to create. So I have an incredible country manager. His name is Daniel. I'm not going to tell him his last name because I don't want anyone to steal him from me.
Steal him.
I have an incredible country manager who helps me run my business. And also the people under him as well are great. I think it's, because the narrative is always like, and you've probably heard this many times, like, people have like cameras watching their businesses from here. And I just had to really trust that what I'm trying to create is something that is valuable enough. And if I bring the right people in and also pay them enough, that people will be committed to our mission and then get them invested in the mission. So it's not by my own might, it's by these particular pillars of personalities that we brought in. And then this last December when I was home, we all met together, like the entire team, from the people who are makeup artists to our photographer to our assistants, like everybody got together and all fellowship together. And it was like, oh, we've built something here.
So let's talk about success. And the good, the bad, the ugly of success.
Sure.
Yeah.
The good.
What success means to you?
So I think success right now means, it changes, but right now it really means the fact that I do have more control over my time, right? I worked up until April 1st, 2022, I worked another job, full-time job, while I was working on the brand.
Are you serious?
Yes, I did. We can get into the mechanics of that and why that had to be. So for the first time ever, I have more control over my time. I have the freedom to decide what I want to do with my day. Obviously, most of the time, it's not really freedom because I still have to work. But so that feels really great to be your own boss. But then you realize that you're not actually your own boss. My team, I have a huge team in Nigeria that I'm accountable to. I have a team here that I'm accountable to. I think about my siblings, my parents, all those people are still, very much voices in my head, even as kind of the business is growing and changing, right? So the opportunity to do what I love and still have this passion for it and still kind of have that be going to Nigeria to work on a new collection is still favorite thing to do in the world. And there's nothing that beats it when it's a blank slate and it's like, what colors are we working with this season? What are the fabrications? I get to go home and run around and play and make my funky videos. That is still the best thing. And the fact that I get to do that on an all-time basis is the biggest joy of my life. The bad, I think, like with everything, you can kind of, we've talked about this a little bit, there's more attention. There's more attention. Yeah. And so if you are not steady and wise, you can confuse that for success. And I think one thing I'm really learning right now, especially with fashion, is it's a fickle business. Yeah. It has a very short attention span. So the work has to continue to be the most important thing. And I need to always focus on that. Yeah. Because you can get distracted very, very quickly. You know, you start getting invited to more things, you know, which is nice. I love invitations. But you can get distracted by that, you know? And sometimes I'm like, you know, I've had some really amazing mentors who, even in the beginning when nothing was happening, made that really clear. You know, I had a mentor, Mercedes, that said, you know, there's easier ways to become famous. Yeah. If you're in this business to become famous, get the hell out. You know, she used to say that. And I always take that to heart. I'll take that to heart forever. So I think those are some of the challenges. Yeah. The ugly, I think, it's a fickle business. Yeah. So you know, the season, this is the trend, you know, and I really want longevity. I want to be here for a long time. So you constantly have to figure out what is my compass that I'm following, and do you want to be trend driven? Like sometimes you have to focus on what's going on if you want to stay relevant. Yeah. And so that constant feeling like you're kind of just, you could be blowing with the wind is not a very good feeling, you know? Yeah. So.
And then when you think about the sort of the innovative way to get out of your fabric, right? There's like the technique, there's exploring different fabrics. Like with this one, you have this lace with the adire, and then there's the form in which you're making the garments, right? Yeah. How are you able to intersect those different worlds and innovate around the Yoruba culture for a global consumer?
So, taking your piece for example, right? It's really an ode to my mom and my aunts, like lace and adire merged together, right? But a Nigerian audience, this lace would be a lot. There would be a lot more than this, right? So I always start with my consumer. My consumer is an American woman, right? Like this is my marketplace. So I think about what she's going to wear, right? And there's my Nigerian side that's very different from my American side, right? So, you know, I remember when we first started, Daniel used to say, this is auntie wear, like, you know, because he's in Nigeria. And, you know, I wasn't offended because I know my customer. Yeah. Like, I know my customer. I make clothes for a very specific woman. And I make clothes for a very specific personality. Yeah. So when I always approach from color and the design, obviously the adire pattern, the actual physical pattern. So there are things that I love to do that basically, for a number of reasons, I've stopped doing it. Anything that's like, from a production standpoint, that's too intensive, I really don't do anymore. But technically, I always approach the fabric like, how can we iterate? How can we create something new? How can we take up some adire techniques and mash them together? So I'm always thinking about that, you know, just from like, how can we push the technique forward? Sense at all. But to the extent that we really are trying to create an ecosystem, and it's not to be kumbaya, I really do want my people to come along for this thing that I've built together, you know? And so really working on making sure that everyone's really compensated well for the work that they do. Yeah.
So we discussed the notion of ecosystem building, because you used the term ecosystem. And you talked about training, the importance of training your team, not just because of what the end product looks like for you, but the impact it makes in the lives of people that are collaborating with you. How are you a catalyst to be an ecosystem builder in the fashion world in Nigeria?
Oh my God, that's a huge question.
And then translating that ecosystem building to the West.
So I went to Mexico in January 2022 and just went to Oaxaca to go visit, just to see it. And I got there and I said, bought a ticket, all these things. And at one point I looked around and I was like, they don't have a beach here. They don't have mountains here. Why are we all here? And there's people coming from all around the world. And we're here to drink their mezcal. They weave beautiful rugs, hand-dyed wool, and they weave these gorgeous rugs. They're amazing. They weave, there's so many different types of weaving traditions. They make these beautiful garments. All of these traditional indigenous textiles and techniques and industries built around these traditional practices, right? And I wanted to weep. I wanted to weep because I sat there and thought, we have all of these things. There's not one of these things that we don't have. And we actually have more, I dare say. Ikpetumodo had a pottery industry that was thriving. Thriving. Ogun State, God bless them, what they've done with Adire. Like metal smithing, right? Soap production, iron smithing, ogogoro production. Like we have all of it. And yet these technologies, and I don't use that word lightly because that's what they are, we've just said, meh. And I know, and there can be some push. There's some nuance. Adire, thank God, right? We have that to look to. But there's so many other industries that we've just said, we don't want to have anything to do with that. And I thought, wow, I'm here in Mexico, right? You have their mezcal business is $1 billion business. When you drink pulque, which is the first thing that comes out of the agave plant, it's emu. It's the same thing.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
That's the base. Yeah, so then if you distill, and if you drink mezcal and you drink ogogoro, they're not that different from each other. Yeah. It's now $1 billion industry. And we're sitting in Nigeria and say there's no jobs.
And we're buying Hennessy.
And there's no jobs. Yeah. And people are suffering. And our ancestors have given us the technologies and the tools to create things that the world would just love if we had it on offer. When I started Busayo, this was not all that gelled in this way, right? But when you begin to do this work, and then you see like, okay, so in the beginning, oh no, we can't do mass production in Nigeria. So many people. No, my people at my factory just want to make t-shirts. We cannot do this, it's too hard. The number of people that said that. So you begin to do this work and it's small. And the number of people that when I started was like, Busayo with that small fabrics, 5 years, some of the dyers, they'd be like, here she comes again with that 10 yards.
Yeah, 10 yards.
I don't have time for it, Joe. And then you just slowly, and I honestly think I was possessed by something bigger than myself, honestly, because it doesn't actually make sense. Because it was Busayo with that 10 yards for many years.
Busayo with her 10 yards. Wow.
Yeah, no, yeah. And like, I think about Oga Karamo was one of my dyers who just, it didn't matter if it was 5 yards, it didn't matter if it was 3 yards, he would do it. Yeah, no, he's actually, he's Gambian.
Oh, he's Gambian.
That may have something to do with it. He's not Nigerian. I mean, now we have everyone.
Of course,
Abib is a Yoruba man who works with me, all the stuff. Yeah. But at the time, in the beginning, it was just him. And the vision, I honestly didn't allow myself to dream this big. I don't know if, it's interesting because, my mother is someone who's like, just so faithful and dreams and has these big, aspirations. And I honestly didn't allow it. I think it was too big for my mind to even imagine. But somehow I just kept, every year, I would just keep showing up and I just kept doing the work, right? So in terms of the ecosystem, it was that constant chipping at it, right? And adding one person. Yeah. And then learning the business of fashion. Like learning the business. Like it wasn't, as I said, mentorship was really important. I had a mentor, Mercedes, who really taught me the business, right? Because there's what you see on the outside, and then there's the actual how this thing actually works. Actually operates.
So who's your customer? Who's your woman or
my ride or die?
Your ride or die.
My ride or die. So I always say that Black American women got Busayo where it is today. Those are just the facts. When I started the brand, I always think about my friend Helen Skinner, who said to me, we were lawyers together, and I said, I don't know how to do this thing. I want to start this brand. She says, okay, well, why don't we have a pop-up? And I was like, okay. This is literally my office. I was at a law firm at the time. So I had 2 legal jobs. My first one was at a law firm. Okay. I was working as a law firm associate. This is the beginning of the brand. And she literally picks up the phone and calls her friend Carrie, who has a shoe showroom in Midtown Manhattan. And Carrie just happens to have been away. Like, there were so many God moments. Was at Las Vegas for Magic. So the showroom was empty. The shoes were gone because they were in Las Vegas. And so she was like, oh yeah, she can use the showroom for her pop-up. So that was our first pop-up.
Yeah.
And I basically invited all the people I knew, right? I just told all my friends. And I had a really great circle of Black women, friends, diasporic Black women, right? Black American women, Black Caribbean women, a few Nigerians, but mostly like Black women in America who showed up, and then they kept showing up and they kept supporting me, and my Nigerians would show up too, but not like this. So when I think about those years, and they were 8 years, right, before Saks happened, Black women were the ones that really came and showed up for my brand. Yeah. And so I am very, very obsessed with how do I engender through my work diasporic conversations that promote us connecting across oceans. I'm not really that interested in this kind of like authentic Africanness and who somehow has ownership of like African identity. All that stuff that you see on social media actually makes me very upset and sometimes brings me to tears. Because what a lost opportunity for us, especially I think as Nigerians, right? Or children of African immigrants. I mean, I look at what Black American people were, first of all, what they survived, and then what they created in this country that has allowed me to really like have the privilege, the privilege we have as Black people is because of the things that they really fought for. And so I'm in gratitude. I'm really in gratitude to their journey. And I also think that we have a lot to learn, really. Because, first of all, what we are going through in Nigeria and what our people are going through it's horrible. So like, how can we, to me, it's like, let's look across to other journeys that other people, Black people across the globe are having. And then also, frankly, my dad is he's a professor of African religion, and he was talking about the growth of Yoruba religion in the West, because we at home don't really want to have anything to do with it. So and that Ifa had said at some point like that it's the children of Ifa that were taken that are gonna like bring this faith forward. And isn't that what's happening? Isn't that what's happening? It's happening. So we can keep talking about this is our culture, but is it the parties? Is it the music? Like, what are we actually talking about?
Yeah, I think it's sort of to kind of bring sort of that comes in a full circle. Harry Belafonte passed away today. And when we think about sort of the impact that he had as just not just obviously incredible artist, like just brilliant, but the impact that he had in civil rights movements, like in the 60s. I grew up listening to him growing up, and today we were just like on our family chat group, and the song with Mary Makeba came on, and I just bawled my eyes out this morning. Yeah.
I mean, he really, when you think about his friendships, right, with Martin Luther King and the way that he put his money where his mouth is. Like, he was like, okay, I'm out here looking pretty, but I'm gonna give you guys money and the resources so that you guys can do what you're doing. And what a powerful model that is.
So the one question I've been asking people is, to you, what does it mean to dream? What does it mean to build? What does it mean to back?
So dreaming now, I'm a little bit ashamed to say it because I don't think I allowed myself to dream before now. I feel like it was felt too overwhelming and felt like there were too many hindrances, you know? And, you know, as I said, my mother is like, you know, she loves the, you know, faith the size of a mustard seed. And she would always, you know, life and death is in the power of the tongue. She would always say these things. And I just, you know, and that reminds me. So my friend Adik Barrow used to always say, like at the bottom of her email, it always says, you know, dreams come true. Like it literally just says those words. And for years, I would always read that. And I've told her about this. I would always read it and be like, okay, I guess. Like, you know, it felt like it was for other people.
Yeah, you were just
right?
Like,
it felt like, okay, yeah. But it felt like it happened for other people. And I had to literally this year, I said to her, I said, you know, I have to be honest with you. Like I've always would see your signature and just kind of roll my eyes a little bit and have to say, I'm completely wrong. Dreams do come true.
Yeah.
And because I am living my dream. But it doesn't, there's no point where it's like, oh yes, you know.
Sit back.
It's like, the work is just beginning.
Yeah.
That's the part they don't tell you know? And so building is really like, I feel like building is the building space is really where I'm actually allowing myself to now dream. Like, oh, okay, now that this has happened, wait, maybe I can allow myself to kind of open this up a little bit. So the back, oh gosh, the amount of people backing, I'm so blessed, the amount of backers, right? Like though the people that showed up at the pop-ups, showed up at an event, who buy something, like those are sort of the external backers who in small ways and big ways have supported the brand. And then there's the mentor tours. You know, I have a mentor right now, Hillary Cullum. I speak to her every Friday. Standing 11 a.m. appointment of somebody who's just showing up, who's just there to support me and hear what's going on and advise. One of my first mentors, Mercedes Gonzalez, was an amazing supporter who was just like, where's the line sheet? What have you done? You know, just really made sure that I was constantly showing up in the marketplace. My incredible siblings, I have 3 of them. And so those people, you know.
And then actually one last question is, knowing what you know now, what would you do differently? If anything.
You know, knowing what I know now, I'm not sure I would have started this, to be honest, because I think it would have, well, no, because knowing what I know now, yes, I'd be like, yes, it was gonna work out. But if I'd known it was gonna take so long, knowing myself then, I'm not sure I would have had the courage to go forward. As I said, I quit my job and was like, I'm launching a clothing brand. And we had a big party, we did the whole thing. And then 3 years later, I had to go back and be like, ooh, you know?
The humble pie.
Yeah, and now I'm without my big salary. I'm now sitting in a cubicle. All the trappings that came with that first job are gone. And now I'm literally in a tiny cubicle like a worker bee. So I know that if I hadn't, I'm not sure if I'd known how long it was gonna take, I would have been like, okay, let's do it, you know? And also how much, but you don't know what you don't know. I think someone launching a brand now is in a much better space. Social media, YouTube, Instagram, all this didn't exist when I started. So like you didn't even have the tools to research the same way, you know?
And you understand your consumers. You have easier access to your customer versus the retailer having that relationship on your behalf.
All that stuff that I just didn't, you know. But I also would say learn the business. Like learn the business you're entering. You know, that would be my other kind of 2 cents to my earlier self. Like, but I also like I had people who were like making me do that and like teaching me.
Awesome. Thank you.
Oh my God, this was so fun.
So this was awesome.
I could talk to you forever.
So thank you. Thank you for joining us on today's episode of Eye of Africa. I am your host, Aina Fadino. And thank you so much, Busayo Olupona, for an honest, transparent, real, and engaging conversation. And until the next one, take care.